Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this bonus episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 129 with Karan Raturi, who works with upGrad, focusing on their North American market. So he shares his story, but also just the unique tendencies of upGrad as the global leader in digital education in terms of really networking global populations of students and working across many different countries. A lot of the folks out there, the organizations currently in EdTech kind of just focus on their home countries and maybe eventually over time expand globally, but upGrad is kind of going hard and fast on the global expansion. It's really interesting to see and just great to also hear the level of care and kind of student-centered perspective and kind of focus on collaboration and the human aspect of the students and the programs that they support. So really great work that they're doing. Some great resources to check out as always and ways to connect with Karan and upGrad. So definitely do that. And as always, go check out our merch store and go support us on Patreon. They help keep the lights on, and just appreciate everyone checking those things out and supporting us there and for listening to the show. So without further ado, this is episode number 129, a bonus episode with Karan Raturi. We are here finally. For me, it feels like a long time coming. I mean, we've had to reschedule back and forth a little bit, but also like I've been seeing upGrad in the news and kind of the ed tech world for a while now. So it feels like a really just great opportunity to learn more about the work that you and your team are doing and just talk more about digital education, which I'm always happy to do. So we will start out as we always do. If you want to introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your professional journey and how you got to be where you are today.
I'm Karan Raturi. I am the general manager for upGrad in North America. So generally leading our expansion strategy in the North American market. Largely, we've been based in India. I'm happy to talk a little bit about my professional journey. Have my undergrad in biomedical engineering from Georgia Tech. Did nothing related to that. Went into the world of consulting and finance for a few years. Then headed off to business school at Wharton and got my MBA there. Likewise, after Wharton, didn't go into sort of the traditional MBA professions. Joined our family business in Atlanta, where I'm currently based. And ran that for a few years through exit. I largely led the corporate development team, and subsequent to that, I joined Wayfair to lead their sort of Canadian expansion strategy, specifically focused on supply chain and operations. And that's sort of where I really understood the e-commerce business, understanding the ways we efficiently acquire customers online, and how critical it is to sort of maintain that side of the business and manage it closely, as well as how important it is to deliver on a customer promise, which I think Wayfair does really, really well. And a slightly different world there because we're shipping large physical goods, whereas upGrad is an entirely digital product. But there's a surprising amount of overlap I find in some of the ways we think about customer acquisition. When I left Wayfair to join upGrad, I left as the head of business planning, and I came over to upGrad, like I said, to grow their North American footprint. And very excited to be here. And really deliver on the learning outcomes that we are so focused to bring to not only the South Asian customers that we've had historically, and now expanded to Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific region, and now North America.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's been noteworthy to me is just seeing, I think, a really truly global sort of digital education organizations working with universities and everything versus often, wherever any other companies are based, they just kind of serve those kind of more local customers and everything, even though, even like, any country like America, or, it can be obviously quite large and diverse in its own right. But
That's right.
Just been really impressed, I guess, with the kind of the global focus. So I guess just for everyone's sake, though, if you just want to take a moment to explain a bit about what upGrad does in kind of the greater higher ed space.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, upGrad is a higher ed company. It's in fact South Asia's largest online higher education company. We specialize in certificate programs, executive programs, which are slightly longer. So, a certificate program might be 2 to 4 months. Our executive programs slightly longer, 6 to 9 months, as well as master's degrees. So, all three of those together really target a working professional. 25 to 45 is, our sweet spot. But frankly, we're in the business of lifelong learning. And so we can continue to see folks younger and older joining our courses as the demands of their jobs or aspirations require them to invest in their education. So we are an online higher education company. We've recently become one of the world's largest master's programs. We've actually graduated 8,500 master's students in the last 9 months. And so certainly seeing scale in particularly the technology fields, but also in management. I'd say those are our two key domains where we really thrive. Programs like a master's in data science from Liverpool John Moores University is one of our top programs. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, and then our master's in management programs, our MBA programs. Like I said, I think we started 6 years ago in India. Headquarters remain in Mumbai. We saw that business grow first couple of years, really refining the product, but since then scaled substantially. And what we found, Dustin, was that we had revenue coming in from 85 odd countries without marketing outside of India. And I think that's largely attributed to sort of word of mouth. Folks having a really solid outcome, both from a learning outcome standpoint, but also career outcomes. And so, whether it's sort of Africa, Caribbean, South America, we started to see some of the trickle revenue coming there from what folks were reading online and what we were able to deliver for them as education has become more and more globally accessible, which is what we're really, really excited to continue to expand on. And in the North American market, it was actually our second largest international market after the Middle East. And what we wanted to do is appoint leaders in each of the regions we felt we wanted to really take control of and deliver more and more exceptional learning outcomes, which is why I mentioned Europe, Middle East, Africa being taken over by my colleague Saranjeet and Zubin Gandavia, another colleague of mine who's CEO of Asia Pacific. And myself in North America. So what we basically decided is, look, we're seeing organic business pop up in these markets. Let's nurture that. Let's harness that. Let's deliver localized learning outcomes and career outcomes, and go global. And this has been sort of in the last year. So that's been the evolution from 6 years ago to basically 2021. We have a small but growing footprint in the U.S. And if we talk about what differentiates us, right? There's a lot of online higher ed companies doing a variety of things. And I really want to emphasize where upGrad stands out. One is that there's an outcomes obsession. So we don't necessarily talk a lot about just the curriculum or just the university partners. We instead talk about what our learners are able to accomplish as they graduate. And that's really what we measure success by. We have a lot of technology built into the platform. So we collect over 150,000 data points as a learner goes through the learning process. We're able to use that data to refine our coursework for future batches, but also to kind of predict where this individual student might thrive in a professional environment. So if they're struggling with certain types of coursework, we know they might not be a fit for, say, something that's heavy in a specific type of coding language that we've seen them struggle with. So we'll actually recommend career services and job opportunities that are customized or specialized to that individual. And then lastly, I'd say we've really been, I'd say almost paranoid about offline versus online. And how do we recreate some of the shortcomings of offline or online by bringing an offline experience to online. And that's really a peer-to-peer learning experience. So we do a lot to gamify the peer-to-peer interaction so that learners are rewarded for answering questions or doubt resolution for other folks in the program. So we try to make it as collaborative an experience as possible, really bringing in elements of offline education to an online delivery model.
Really fascinating stuff, because I think, like, for me, what was resonating with that is just like, it just feels very human centered, like the idea of, like, for career services or something that could just kind of be like, well, yeah, there's just kind of general tips about job searching, and here's just a job board that has like everything under the sun or whatever, but like,
Right.
taking points that can really contour that, customize it, tailor it to somebody. And then just like, I know, yeah, being in the space, like how crucial it is to know that like students are getting a good experience and would recommend it to others and that sort of thing. Which again, it's like, yeah, even in global digital, education, it still is, it comes down to just like, you're going to ask your friends and colleagues and, folks like, well, what do you think of this? Like, what are your reviews? Like, what are,
That's right.
what are your thoughts about this? So yeah, I mean, it's just so fascinating, because I think so many people think that digital education might be kind of impersonal or something, but it can be, deeply personal, kind of deeply human if you design it that way.
That's right, and there's only one way to do that, and it's to be high touch, right? I think there's an element of the human experience that you can't replace using technology, and we don't shy away from that. We're not here to say that, like, we're doing everything asynchronous or no one's available via text or phone. We actually have an upGrad buddy system. That's why we have industry leading graduation rates. We make sure that if a student is facing challenges, and as you can imagine, in the last year, for example, in India, COVID's been a huge challenge. So, bringing a humanness to the experience. If folks need to defer some coursework, restart, we're not a platform that is, it's a train and you're either on it or you're not. You're really interacting with faculty, with industry experts, and upGrad staff to make sure that our promise to you and what was sold to you is what you're experiencing along the way. If you give, for example, just a small example, if you give one of our live sessions and it gets an average rating of below 4.6, I think it is, we'll start to actually interact with that expert and talk about how to make it better. And so we set a high bar for delivery and what content we're surfacing and what the students are providing feedback with, and making sure we're continually getting better and better. So making sure that even though we're a high tech company, that we are also a high touch company. We've done that well in India, and it is absolutely top of mind for me to deliver a similar, if not better, set of offerings in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great to hear. I kind of use that adage a lot, of sort of like high tech and high touch. Like, you put those two kind of forces together, and it's just some really powerful stuff. Like really great outcomes and just a great experience. And and then that's like kind of not resting on your laurels either. Like, you're kind of keeping an eye on things too, which is just great to hear. So I guess, you're kind of alluding to it, so I want to focus on a little bit more of just obviously like that expansion into the international side of your work of in digital education. You're based in India, but you've now, like you said, over the past year, started to reach out to a lot more markets and everything. So I guess just from your point of view, and you can just kind of speak to your own experience, but like, what have you seen as some of the successes and challenges that you've learned from this effort? Because obviously, again, like you'd probably have to market differently, or just kind of adjust to different cultural norms around education or something in all these different areas. So just, I'm curious, is anything that you might want to share about that?
I mentioned the trickle of revenue that we saw that came in without marketing, and so it's very curious, right? The first thing you do when I was asked to join the firm and take over the U.S. business and the North American business is I had a bunch of calls with folks that chose to sign up with upGrad in the United States, while none of the delivery really was oriented towards them. It was really oriented towards an Indian and maybe some other parts of the global audience. And so I spoke with them and understood, what drove them to their decision. And what you learn is this outcomes focus that I was referencing earlier is what mattered to them. And as we've grown, in the U.S. in the last couple of months, it's been a short time frame, but as we've expanded outside the community that originally sort of supported us, which were largely the Indian diaspora living in the United States, we're finding that students are very open to the global brands we're bringing to the table. So our partnership with Liverpool John Moores University or IIIT Bangalore or some of the IITs, premier institutions globally and in Europe, in India, so on and so forth. Because we're being able to take their coursework and scaffold it with our career services, with our high touch sort of upgrad buddies and mentors, they are signing up without hesitation that this university is not, the one in their state or the one they're most familiar with, or the MITs of the world. So I'm fascinated and excited that outcomes-driven online education is resonating that deeply without just an affiliation for what's comfort or what's most sort of familiar. That's on the student side. On the university side, I'd like to just mention that we're being able to, open doors at universities, talk to them about democratizing their sort of or increasing access, I should say, to some of their flagship programs to qualified students all over the world. And they're excited by that. So when a university comes and partners with upGrad, what they're able to do with basically a single single partner is to reach students in 85 countries that can now learn from their faculty, enroll for them. And it's not just about, an additional revenue stream, but it's finding exceptional academically qualified students around the world that are interested in their education and their curriculum, and having them all on board simultaneously. And so we're creating these incredible global cohorts where, folks from, tens of different countries are interacting, solving problems together, all online, while being coached by, faculty and industry experts from a third location. And I see that as an incredible impact that we're making without, paying much attention to barriers and borders.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it just, there's, the partners that you're working with and things that are just, I guess, being more liberal or kind of open-minded with their sort of mission and idea of like accessibility, because, a long distinguisher of like, certain institutions is like their selectivity and everything. But, it's like, well, I mean, do you want to just like serve the people in your town, or do you want to like, kind of broaden the idea of what it means to be of service and, help people and be able to have that broader impact? And it's just, increasingly, I think, more institutions obviously seem to be kind of waking up to that and kind of living out their values in that way of being able to reach people all across the world. So
that's right, Dustin. And I would add that I don't think selectivity and access have to necessarily butt heads. I think there are strategies that institutions can develop that allow no sort of prestige erosion, for certain programs, certain schools, while their faculty and the actual knowledge base can still be shared globally. And I truly believe there's a collaborative model where that can coexist.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point as well, because I think not telling somebody it's like, hey, you're wrong for like wanting to be a distinctive or something. It's like let's like evolve and sort of mature, or sort of embody whatever that value is. Like, where is that coming from? Let's like honor that and
that's right.
Sort of manifest it. These digital spaces, because I mean, clearly, there's obviously a lot of institutions that have students from all over the world that have to come to campus wherever they are, and the idea of, I'm sure it's easier for them to maybe kind of just click in, to do the same kind of work but digitally. So
that's right.
I mean, there's certainly a spectrum there.
If I just add a quick data point to that, if you look at the top sort of 3 reasons international students, and I'm the GM for North America, but I do want to make this point about international. The top 3 reasons international learners aren't able to attend higher ed institutions in the U.S. The top one is tuition. The second is visa and immigration concerns, and the third one is cost of living. right? So when you combine those three, that's about 3/4 of the reasons international students can't or won't attend higher ed institutions in the U.S. And if you think about a platform like upGrad, we're addressing that entire set of hurdles by bringing that offline kind of experience through our products and services to a global audience. Just wanted to reemphasize that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, just speaking about obviously the focus on international expansion for you all, but also last year was bringing a lot of disruptive change as well for institutions, for everybody. So anything that you can reflect on of, the disruptions of the past year and what that's taught you about kind of the digital education space?
First and foremost, I think I'd say that the digital education infrastructure proved to be ready to save the day. I think I was surprised by the velocity um, at which we were able to transition online. I think we saw it in our professional lives with maybe Zoom and Google Meet. And I don't know if either of the one product and one entire company, so Google Meet being the product and Zoom being the entire company, realized or would ever expect such an influx of traffic on their platforms. But clearly they were ready and available. And I think the technology infrastructure also proved itself that it was largely in place to handle this transition. And all that we needed was sort of an impetus to make that transition. Obviously it was and is still in some parts of the world a pretty terrible situation. So certainly wouldn't put a positive light on it. But from an industry perspective, the COVID pandemic for ed tech was a moment of truth. And it posed the question: are we, ready to go deep in digital and virtual? I think it was a resounding yes from an infrastructure standpoint, and so it really brought the industry. It accelerated sort of the transition to online, and then I think it frankly expanded the addressable market size significantly. Because if you talk to students now, their consideration about being in class and the way they think about offline versus online has permanently transformed. Not for everyone, but for enough to where we can say that the market has permanently shifted, that online is now an embedded part of the experience, so much so that majority see the future as hybrid, if not significantly more online. So hybrid, I think, will be the future. There will be elements that will be irreplaceable, but I think a vast majority of the delivery can occur online. And for young professionals and working professionals in general, online is actually going to, I think, be the way forward. I think the other thing that the last year kind of shaped, to follow up sort of that point I just made, is that offline isn't the end all be all for education. We saw that online is not just feasible, but it's convenient, flexible, and a preferable way to learn. Folks were able to sort of spend more time with families, kids, and take care of so many of other parts of sort of life's administrative and obligation duties. That I think it's going to be an irreversible preference for many. And so I just want to sort of add that to the back of what I said earlier.
Yeah, I mean I agree. I mean, I think that's absolutely the future, is definitely more of that hybrid, and yeah, the idea that digital education is here to stay. If there's any doubts, it's I would think most of them kind of been abated by this point, but yeah, because I mean, so many more people were exposed to it, again under sort of unfortunate circumstances and forced into it, but that it creates just sort of more acceptance and normalcy, and just sort of having at least so much built out now, it'd be hard to kind of just take all of that away. And students and students will demand the courses, but certainly now I've been trying to keep an ear out and an eye out for just the fact that like staff and faculty are also going to be like, hey, well, it'd be great to be able to like work from home, a couple of days a week, or during like, holiday breaks. It's like, well, why do we have to be on campus? The students aren't here, like, they're just like, it's like, hey, right. we showed that we were able to do it before. So like, we should be able to do it more now, and just keep the business of these institutions running and being more flexible and hybrid and all those sort of things. So I mean, I just really like the ways that you put that. And yeah, I think the future is, very bright, and we're seeing it too. I think so many more good examples of how to do it well, like how to do digital education well in terms of just course structure and delivery and support resources and engagement through like events and stuff. And it just excites me because I think there was definitely a lot a decent bit at least of kind of expertise and experience out there with this sort of stuff, but now it's just so much more prevalent. So I think it allows for a lot more creative ideas to do this work and for people to collaborate more and have that shared experience and kind of work together on that to just keep making it better. So
yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, we always like to talk through like some resources to share, whether the things from your organization or just other stuff that's catching your attention, books, articles, podcasts, all that kind of good stuff. So anything that you would like to mention that we could put in the show notes?
You mean besides the Higher Ed Geek podcast?
Right. In addition, of course. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to, I think we all, a lot of folks in the industry are reading a lot of similar things, whether it's Inside Higher Ed or EdSurge, and Hall and IQ, other resources that we all kind of follow. One thing that I've found that's been cool to dive into has been Clubhouse. And the two kind of groups that I follow there and tune in from time to time, one's called the EdTech Collective, the other is the EdTech Founders Club. And both, I think, have been very interesting resources as we hear about businesses scaling, the challenges they face, and really collaborating and talking through ideas on an interactive platform. So I'd certainly encourage folks to take a look there. There's a lot of different groups. These are just two that I've found interesting. They have sort of weekly or more frequent, interactions that you can kind of have live dynamic conversations within. So would certainly, suggest that. The other, for those who aren't, deeply on the business side of things, but are curious, is as some of these ed tech firms start to apply for public filings and start to sort of be traded. They release public financial statements. I think 2Us was probably one of the first ones. And so would certainly recommend anyone kind of studying a business to look at, 10Qs, 10K, so quarterly and annual filings of these companies reveal a ton about the state of affairs. So would certainly encourage that as well. Just two thoughts around, different sources of information than the traditional, newsletters and such.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all good stuff. And I think, I know there's a lot of chatter around, because 2U being, I think, a pretty seminal one for this sort of current era of digital education. But then Coursera more recently, there's a lot of chatter around that one as well. Just sort of like, how are these companies sort of spending their dollars, what's gaining more traction or not, and that sort of thing. So I mean, not probably what most people think of as like engaging relevant reading, but definitely some real, like, because that's just literally like the reality. Like certain people are gonna maybe talk a big game about one thing or another, but proofs in the kind of the pudding there. But so we'll link out to all that and ways to connect with you and upGrad. But we always like to kind of close out, though, give you opportunity for any final thought or call to action on this topic that you'd like to wrap up the episode with.
I'll plug upGrad. So, definitely check us out at upgrad.com. We're excited to be expanding quickly in the US. Some things top of mind for me that we're starting to look at is this idea of augmented reality and immersive education, really bringing global access to Western education. So I want to, have anyone listening to think about what that means for the future of universities, like you mentioned, some of the top names, and what is how do we balance selectivity and accessibility. And I'm thrilled by what I'm seeing in the marketplace as I speak with universities. And the thought of global cohorts. I think that's fascinating that you would take a course at an American university and side by side with you are, classmates and peers. You're working on a group project with someone from, potentially 5 or 6 other countries. And I want to leave that as a thought, as an exciting kind of where things are headed, and how we can all sort of embrace that in our classrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think, two interesting points. I mean, just to conclude on and emphasize and, frankly, I agree with you, but like the idea of like a lot of what's happened, I think is kind of like just the beginning of just like,
That's right.
like building out like, good, smart courses with, engaging videos and different things like that. But then the idea of like, okay, well then how about we start building on that with something, like augmented reality or whatever. And then to end it again, just the idea of like, kind of being human, where it's just like, okay, we've got all these amazing people who are pursuing their education together. Like, how can we really more intentionally bring them together for, those like working groups, or even like, I've seen, immersions that could happen anywhere in the
Yes.
world be like just, amazingly impactful for students. So like leaning into that and doing, really smart things with that as well, of saying like, no, this is like a big priority for us, of like bringing these peer students together to learn together, whether it's, online or in person. But, again, the hybrid idea of like, what's the best of both worlds that we could do to make, ultimately the best learning experience.
Absolutely. Agree with you, Dustin.
Well, I feel like we covered so much great stuff. And like I said, I mean, I'm just seeing so much awesome news kind of coming out from upGrad lately, and very
Yeah.
grateful that we got the opportunity to chat here and just learn more about it and learn more about your background as well. So again, we'll have ways to connect with you and upGrad and everything that we mentioned in the show notes as usual. But just thank you again so much for taking the time to hang out for the episode.
It's my pleasure, Dustin. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.